Hello, BookTube. Sometime in the miasma, the diasma, the phantasma of the last week, sometime in the last week, despite feeling like crap on a stick, I actually did go to the Brattle Bookshop, which is a used bookstore in the heart of Boston. I love to go there. They're right up the street from a place that I spent a good deal of time last week. So at some point, I tottered over and actually went to the shop, and I got a bunch of books. Not as many as I maybe would have wanted because I really had to draw the line at weight. I was not feeling all that good. So I got a bunch of books that I wanted to show you rather than just shelve them. What good is a book haul if you don't show it on BookTube? But first, I wanted to give you an update, a quick update on something that I got in the mail yesterday. I got a MacBook in the mail yesterday. One of you sent me a little 11-inch MacBook Air. Because I've been having problems with my MacBook, my 13-inch MacBook Air. Every once in a while, the screen is misbehaving, and I don't like that. Here, let's get rid of my sexy backlighting. I don't like that because that could be a harbinger of doom. That if it's winking on and off a few, going black and needing to be resuscitated on and off a few times over the course of a week, it could easily die on me in mid-sentence. And having a backup would be really nice. And none of my other machines is quite up to the task of being a backup. So one of you sent me this old MacBook Air. You can see, if you're familiar with yesterday's video, I've done a good deal of cleaning up on it. It doesn't have the sticker residue anymore. It's a pretty clean thing. And I got around a lot of limitations on the screen itself, on the device itself. A lot of the there were some locks, some impediments in the operating system that needed a wee bit of jailbreaking. I managed to do a lot of that, get it up and running as a useful machine. It's only one maddening little thing that I have not been able to figure out how to fix, which is that when I go to Wikipedia, which as any writer will tell you, you go to several times a day, it won't open Wikipedia. It says that it's a dangerous site and refuses to open it no matter what. No matter how often I tell it, I'm willing to take the risk. You are simply wrong. And I have been all through the systems preferences of this thing, the permissions preferences of this thing, trying to figure out it's got to be a glitch in the machine. But it won't do that one website, and it'll do everything else. If it will log on to Twitter and doesn't think that Twitter is dangerous, then it bloody well better be able to log on to Wikipedia. That's the only thing I haven't been able to figure out how to fix, and I will. And it's not like it's a big crisis, because I've got my phone and my iPad within reach of this at all times when I'm working. I can go to Wikipedia on them. But I want to give you a little update on this. This is a delightful, light as a feather little thing that I am cleaning up. I just noticed as I was showing it to you that I did not get around to the sticker residue on the bottom, but I will do that. It'll be easy to remove that. So that is your tech update. Now let's look at the books, starting with some murder mysteries. And the first one is something I absolutely could not resist. It's by Libby Block, who, as far as I know, is completely forgotten now. She was once a very prominent, very prolific writer, mystery writer. I don't think any of her books are in print. I found this little Dell paperback of Bedeviled, which is about a young composer, a young, handsome composer, who has a premiere piece that he's hoping that an esteemed conductor will conduct and therefore put him on the map. And he's a little bit nervous about the premiere, because the conductor has a reputation for dropping people that he takes on as proteges. And the reputation is that it's not him doing the dropping, it's his Hell on Wheels wife. And the composer's girlfriend, the composer's fiance, is determined that if that happens, she will simply be possessed. She will be bedeviled by the monomaniacal desire to kill that conductor's wife. And that's largely the gist of the book. But the thing that I couldn't resist on it was this. Which is a room-by-room map of the apartment in which the murder takes place. And the good folks at the Brattle told me that this is called a map back, and was extremely popular decades and decades and decades ago in murder mysteries. Who knew? I had no idea. I thought that was fascinating. So while I'm reading this thing, I will constantly be referring back to where things happen. Although, I mean, you've got a master bedroom, lots of guest bedrooms, a library. You've got a library in the middle of the apartment, kitchens, servants' rooms, and I don't even want to think about what this went for monthly rent-wise. I bet $2,000. That'd be my guess, is that this palatial setup was $2,000 to rent per month. But that is for Dick Timber and, for Marsh Mystery Madness down the line. Same thing with this next one. I think I had an ebook of this. I think I had ebooks of all of this author's books that were lost in the great Nook catastrophe, where my Nook app refused to open. And I knew when that happened perfectly well that meant I was going to have to delete it and re-download it. And the Nook website says, well, it's no problem. Go ahead and do that. All your content will still be there. Yeah, but your side-loaded content it'll be gone. And it was true. So I didn't want a useless app on my machine, so I deleted it and re-downloaded it, and 5,000 side-loaded ebooks were gone. And I think this author was in that trove. I'll never get all that trove back. This is Lauren Haney, and this is A Vile Justice, an Ancient Egypt mystery, which I read. I read this when it first came out. I'm going to say in the 1990s, 1999. And it was very, very good. These are set in the reign of Tutmosis, is that right? Evil runs rampant through the great abode of Jehuti, much despised governor of Abu. 4 deaths, each exactly 10 days apart, have occurred in and around the powerful functionary's premises. An expert swimmer drowned, a spearman accidentally impaled on his own weapon, a sergeant of the guard found with a dagger through his breast, a young officer trampled by a horse gone mad. And this is Lieutenant Back is her protagonist. He is not a private eye. He is not for Dick Timber. He is part of the police establishment. And Lauren Haney does these books are fantastic. They're terrifically good. I wish I had them all. Either in mass market paperbacks. This was the only one I saw at the Brattle that day, although I could easily have missed it. I could have missed an African rhino the day that I got this. So I could have missed it. I would gladly take all of these or the ebooks back. Then the next one is also a murder mystery. This is Roderick Allen murder mystery by Ngaio Marsh. This is Last Ditch, which I found in one of these old hardcovers. Very nice. Always happy to have this author in these hardcovers. It stars her famous police detective, Roderick Allen, but in this particular instance, time has passed. And the co-star is his son, Ricky, who's now a young adult man, and wants to write a novel. And hijinks ensue at the location where he is writing his novel that necessitate the presence of the old man to come in and solve the crime. And I read this. Oh my God, when did this come out? This came out in 1977. It's entirely possible that is when I read this last. So it's long overdue for a reread. I love this author. I just recently, I think late last year, reread Death of a Peer and loved it. I expect that this will be the same experience. My reread of Death of a Peer was so much more. I got so much more out of it than I did the first time when I blew through the mass market paperback. I'm sure this is the same thing. I can almost picture what the mass market paperback of this looked like. It didn't look anything like this. But I'm always happy to find this author. If I had my druthers, I would build a whole shelf of her works. Then we have something that is a classic example of something that happens at the Brattle. This is from 2004. And I got the advanced copy of this, and I got the finished copy of this, and I think I started to write a review of it. I don't know if I ever actually did. But this gives me a chance to revisit it. It gives me a chance to try this book again. That's good, because it's kind of been on my mind. This is by Robin Brooks, and it's called The Portland Vase. It's every video, in case you're wondering. It's every video. This is called The Portland Vase, The Extraordinary Odyssey of a Mysterious Roman Treasure. And if you've ever seen this in person in the British Museum, it's amazing. It's amazing to look at. It's exquisitely finished glass in a thing that cannot possibly have been used for daily use. This had to have been a display piece the minute it was made, 2,000 years ago. And there's been all sorts of Casaubon-style scholarly debate about what is actually pictured on the frieze. I don't know if this book gives me a completely uninterrupted view No, it doesn't. That's the closest you're going to get. But this is the story. It's not just an analysis. It's also the story of how this was found, its provenance, the outlandish stories that cropped up around its provenance that turned out most of them not to be true. Some of the big personalities involved. I've been waiting to find this. It's a great little history. I've been waiting to find it again. I should never have gotten rid of it back in 2004, but I did. Then this next one has a uniform look. That's the only reason I got it, is that it's a uniform look with a string of other books that I have. This is Secondary Worlds, a small collection of essays by W.H. Auden. Now, I have the collected essays of W.H. Auden, and I have a couple of the bigger paperbacks of his bookish essays. That's what these are. They're all about books. And I also have the... Random House did a sort of a uniform thing of Auden, including very famously the big collected poems of Auden that are all in this type of look. This type of, the white cover with the different colored border strap. So I figured, these were all store credit anyway. So I got this because it sometimes refocuses my concentration to read essays that I know very well in larger collections in a smaller collection. I do the same thing for Gore Vidal, Christopher Hitchens, George Orwell, Robert Louis Stevenson. You're familiar with the essays in big block volumes, but it's nice to get them in little volumes too. It sometimes sets them apart, even makes them feel different. Like V.S. Pritchett has the Tale Tellers is a little collection of his essays that are all included in the collected essays, but I like it anyway. I've sometimes found that it radically alters the reading experience, so I got this to go along with them. Who is he talking about in this thing? This has his essay on the Icelandic sagas. That's terrific. An essay on the world of opera. An essay on the martyr as dramatic hero. Perfectly happy to read some of those again. I'm always up for rereading Auden's nonfiction. Then this next one is a hardcover of something that I had as a crappy paperback years and years ago. Never even knew that it came out in hardcover. Hardcover will take a lot of punishment, and I will annotate the heck out of this when the time comes. I will. This is by Margaret Hubbard, and it is from who did this? Scribner's did a Classical Life and Letters series, and this is the book on the poet Propertius. There are entries in this list for Virgil and Horace and everybody else in the world. And I've had all of them at one point or another. It's a terrific series. Whoever edited it really did a job of keeping the standards high, because these books are fantastic. This is everything that we know about Propertius, which isn't much. And it's also everything that the author can divine and interpret from the poetry, which is going to differ from author to author, but this author, I've read this book a few times, and it's tremendously good. It is a wonderful book to have on Propertius, and there aren't many of those. He's one of my favorite Roman poets, so I've definitely grabbed this. I have a classics bookshelf. It will definitely go there. Then this next one, I've read this many times. It's probably my favorite book by this author, and I've had it many times. There was, like for instance, 30 years ago, a trade paperback that was quite attractive. It was a photo cover. But it was quite attractive. I really liked it. I had that for years and years. Gave it copies of it to all sorts of people. And I've had other copies throughout the years. But I found a hardcover with the original dust jacket illustration. I couldn't resist, especially since I don't have a print copy of this book at the moment. And this is the Caine Mutiny by Herman Woot. That is a much bigger story than the movie that you might be familiar with. There's a really good, really enjoyable Humphrey Bogart movie that is really good, but it doesn't cover as much ground as the book does. The book is, I think, much more satisfying. If you hear Caine Mutiny and you think of the famous movie with Fred McMurray, and Humphrey Bogart gives a really good performance, kind of a reedy, as Captain Queeg, a captain during World War II who's right on the edge of not being a very good boss, a very good commander. Bogart makes him far more three-dimensional than he is in the book, I have to say, although he's a fascinating character in the book. It's just that Bogart, especially late in the movie, really does a good job with him, I guess. But if you're familiar with it from the movie, you won't have any idea how sprawling a story this is, and how Queeg is not the main character. The main character is a feckless critic of the Navy who acts in ways that you keep expecting him to just get cashiered out or maybe even in prison. It's an interesting thing. This was a bestseller for a long time, back in the 1950s. Is that right? Is it possible that this is a first edition? I don't even know. I wouldn't know. 1951 is when this came out, and it was a bestseller. The early years of the 50s featured a swath of powerful, I won't always say great, I'm not sure that the Caine Mutiny is a great novel, but powerful, definitely sincere, and utterly gripping World War II novels. It was right around then that the literary establishment started to really come to grips. The American literary establishment, the British literary establishment, started to really come to grips with the war. It happened faster in Germany, but it was right around then. I'm pretty sure, I'm blanking on the details. I used to have these when I worked in bookstores. I had these details at my fingertips, but I'm pretty sure that the Caine Mutiny booted off the top of the New York Times bestseller list another great World War II book, or it got booted off by another World War II book. I don't think so, though. I think I got booted off by a firmly civilian book. Either way, it's Herman Wouk when he had to please his editors, when he had to please his audience, when he wasn't a grand old man of letters quite so much, when he had to work at it. And that really makes a difference in his prose. He's very self-indulgent the further along you go, and that's not always a bad thing. I don't think you'll find a much more self-indulgent Herman Wouk book than The Winds of War and War and Remembrance, the two big doorstops. I keep waiting to find those in the old embossed mass market paperbacks. I'll read them again, because they're very good. But I want them in that format, as impractical as it is. I don't want them in big cinder block hardcovers. And those are very self-indulgent books. They're still very good, but they're very self-indulgent. This is much leaner. It's much more whittled down. And wry. Very... I haven't read it in forever. I can't wait. I had a mass market paperback of this. I don't think I read that trade paperback release that came out 20 or 30 years ago. So it's been a long time since I read this, and it's a classic of nautical fiction. Odd enough to say about Herman Wouk, but it's true. He worked on ships, so it works really well. I'm looking forward to getting to it again. I was thinking about it when I did just recently. I think earlier this year, I did a slow reread of 7 Days in May, and was thinking about this and other books like it the whole time. It's time to reread a lot of these things. Then this next one is an author that I love. I've had this book many times. This is Bernd Heinrich, who did the great book Ravens in Winter, and the follow-up, The Mind of the Raven. He's a terrific natural historian and a terrific writer about birds. This is a book in the form of a diary, A Year in the Maine Woods, that just takes you through. It has some of his illustrations are in here. Saw one there. It takes you through all of the different periods of living in an unweatherized house in the Maine woods. I read this. It just come out. I keep asking that question. When did this come out? 1994. I read it. I'm sure I read it around then. I think I've read it since then. I'm a big fan of this author. I've been a champion of him. I hand his works to people all the time. And I'm going to look forward to rereading this one. It had a photograph in it. I have to confess, there's no indication anywhere on this what this is. I have to confess, I don't quite off the top of my head know what that is. It seems vaguely familiar, but the roof is more familiar to me than the statue. Do any of you know who that is? Somebody used it as a bookmark. I'm certainly going to continue to use it as a bookmark. Then we have another old hardcover. This is a booktube buy, only spur of the moment. Like I said, these were store credit, so the nice thing about the Brattle is you can just grab, you can fill your arm. I was feeling really poorly, so I didn't fill my arm much, but I grabbed this because I saw it on Michael K. Vaughan's channel. Because his mummy friend, Roger Hotep, buys books willy-nilly. Seems to have access to Stately Vaughan Manor's credit card. And one of the things that Michael held up was the John Beecroft edition, the 2-volume John Beecroft edition of Rudyard Kipling's works, which is eye-openingly good. I've had it from time to time. In fact, I hauled a 2-volume set on this channel years and years ago, and got rid of it, I think, to one of you. And the minute I saw it on Michael's channel, I thought, well, you know, you're going to have a Kipling edition. You really want that one. So when I was at the Brattle, I was happy to see Volume 1 of the Beecroft Kipling. Now, mine is not in the shape that Michael's is, and it doesn't have Volume 2. Volume 2 could show up. One of the little rules of the Brattle, very much so, is that if you see one volume in a set or series, and you want the rest of them, you should probably grab the one volume because the others may make their appearance. And this is just, you've got the full color cover, and then you've got spot illustrations throughout, but also look at these end papers, just amazing. Just figures from Kipling's work. This has the wartime rationing paper and the deckled edges. Very much hope that I see Volume 2. That would be great. This Volume 1 has the first Jungle Book I know. Yeah, the first Jungle Book, the Just So stories, all of Kim, and Puck of Pook's Hill. So not a bad selection. But I want the other volume as well, so we'll see. We'll see if the Brattle provides. And then the last two things that I got here were oversized art books, which I try not to get. No matter how conducive they are, I try not to get them because they end up being white elephants in Hyde Cottage. Where they are ungainly, they are hard to store, and I don't revisit them enough. Usually, I don't revisit them enough. My New Yorker cartoon collections I revisit often. They justify their place, but most of them not. But I got two. I got two this time around to finish up with. The first one is, when did this come out? 2010. And I believe I got a copy of this from the publisher. I don't think this copy is mine. I mark all the books that come through my hands, and I don't see my mark on this thing. So I don't think this one was mine. It might be another book reviewer that got this from the publisher. I can't imagine if you bought it from the publisher that you would give it up. But this is Bruce Sargent and His Circle by Mark Beard. I don't know how many of you know this, the artist Bruce Sargent. But this Bruce Sargent drew in very Eakins-esque, very John Singer Sargent-esque style, heroic young men. He's pretty obsessed with heroic young men all throughout here. I think some of these are better than others. Some of them are clearly the artist just satisfying himself, I guess would be the polite way to put it. But others of them I really like the composition and the somber color palette of them. Others I really do. I think a lot of them were, there's a fencer. A lot of them were done in sort of tongue-in-cheek pastiche of Sargent, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And we have, if I remember correctly, in the back of this volume, we have more impressionistic artwork from other artists. But don't we have a gallery as well? I could have sworn we did. Here, hang on a second while I fast forward to a gallery of other artists. Is that right? Maybe it's at the front. Let's take a look and see. Because there's a little bit something a little bit interesting about Bruce Sargent. There we go. There's the gallery of artists, and the very first one. This man from the turn of the 20th century is Bruce Sargent, who died in a tragic wrestling accident. Whereas the others, as you can see, are all very different, and they come from different artistic periods. And the thing to know about these artists is that they are all the same person. They are all Max Beard. Mark Beard is all of these people. He got tired of people saying that artists were locked into distinct styles. And so instead of saying, well, I'm not, he said, well, artists are locked into distinct styles. All of these artists are locked into styles of their own. This is clearly the work of Bruce Sargent. And all of his other artists, what were their names again? Let's get back to them and find out. Because this is a very Steve Donoghue thing for somebody to do. Naturally, I love it. There is Bruce Sargent. There's Hippolyte Alexandre Michelin. There's Edith Thayer Cromwell. There's Brechtold Stierwitz. And there's Peter Coulter. And they all have radically different styles. This is kind of a neat little joke. Of course, of all of them, Bruce Sargent is my favorite, so I was happy to get that. But I couldn't get Bruce Sargent and his knockoffs of John Singer Sargent without getting John Singer Sargent, especially since there's a new biography. We saw the advance copy. There's a new biography coming out. So I got one of Sargent has been the subject of innumerable collected volumes of all kinds of different things. And I forget who it was. Was it Yale that came out with a gigantic definitive library of his work? Just a catalog that went from beginning to end. And I was on that list. I got a lot of those. I wrote about some of those volumes. Again, if I can remember to find those pieces, I will link them down below. But in this, as in all cases, if you're wondering if I wrote about something, just Google my name and the something. That's the easiest way to find out. I got rid of all of those volumes. They were a perfect example of the kind of white elephant I'm talking about. But it doesn't mean I don't want any Sargent in my collection. There's one Sargent book out there. It's a collection of portraits. His portraits are by far my favorite thing by this author. There's one big full-color collection of Sargent portraits out there. I forget who does it, or I would look for it on eBay. I might even buy a copy on eBay. I want it so bad. It will turn up at the Brattle. And this is not that, but this is still something that I want. This is, I believe this was the companion volume to a museum exhibit. Most Sargent books are. And this is Uncanny Spectacle, the public career of the young John Singer Sargent. And there's the famous Madame X. Believe it or not, that painting was the source of enormous controversy. There's a whole book about it. But this has, it walks you through all of his work, but it has big color plates as well in the back. There's Robert Louis Stevenson. It just takes you through the plates, the dimensions, the current provenance, all that sort of thing. So the bulk of the book is text describing Sargent the Wunderkind. Although, if I remember correctly, this book does spend quite a bit of time in the period of his life. there's Vernon Lee. If I remember correctly, this does spend quite a bit of time in the parts of his life that aren't the Wunderkind phase, but it concentrates on that marvelously. So I got this. I'm going to have to hope that it does not cause me to just reacquire Sargent books because they take up the devil's own space. We shall see. But anyway, that was a Miasma book haul from the Brattle, which, now that I think about it, it's probably the last time that I will ever use the Boston shuttle buses that have been in place for a month. According to the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, the shuttle buses will be banished back to wherever they're from, and the subway will be back up and running on Monday. So we shall see. We shall see. But in the meantime, that was my haul. Two big art books. Uncanny Spectacle about John Singer Sargent, and Bruce Sargent and his circle. All the members of his circle are himself. Then we have the Beecroft Kipling. I have only volume 1. I will hope to find volume 2. That is not an invitation for you to buy me volume 2. I will find volume 2 on my own. I've had it before on this channel. I've hauled it from the Brattle before. Then A Year in the Maine Woods by Bern Heinrich. I cannot recommend strongly enough his books. The Caine Mutiny by Herman Wouk with this retro cover. Margaret Hubbard's book on Propertius, a really good volume the greatest volume on Propertius that isn't for specialists. Secondary Worlds, essays of W.H. Auden in this particular edition, which will look really nice with all of my others. I have the collected poems, I have the longer poems, and I have this, and I think I have a translation of the Elder Edda that was not done by Auden, but it was dedicated to him, that's in the same thing, in the same format. Then we have the Portland Vase, the history and provenance of one of the most famous works of art from the ancient world. Last Ditch by Ngaio Marsh. Gladly take all of this author in hardcover that I can find. Vile Justice, Detective Back novel. And Bedeviled by Libby Block with a map back on the back. So that was my Brattle haul for last week. So I will doubtless have a Brattle haul for this coming week. We shall see, unless the subway is back up and running and still has a proclivity to burst into flames, in which case maybe I won't make it back with a Brattle haul. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.